I invented the wireless in-ear monitors back in the 60s, and it became these funny things you see in people's ears when they're performing on stage. These, unfortunately, are known to have a 70% increase of hearing loss. We had to do something about it. We developed a new technology. It's a second eardrum that absorbs the harmful pressure and allows real high-fidelity audio to pass through to your eardrum, and as a consequence, lower volumes sound louder and better. When you can take an idea that's fresh and quickly get it into a physical embodiment that you can test, you end up getting immediate validation. You know, it's so nice to have more than one shot. It used to take so long to build these things. With Fusion, you can, dream of something, build it, and then just go and port that right out to a 3D printer and play with it. There's an awful lot of things that don't work as expected, and they're wonderful. Trying out maybes, the ability to go what if, and not have to invest the moon. You could have a harebrained idea. So what? Go try it. I wanted to know what Fusion had to offer. It's got to be simpler, it's got to be inclusive, it's got to be easy to use, and it's got to be in the cloud. It's not as hard to learn. I wouldn't have thought that I could try a new piece of software and get up and running as quickly. It's giving me renderings without so much effort. Then you have the online collaboration. It's easy to use, and you're creating online together, so you're jamming. For me, I'm really happy to see, I think that Fusion is where everything is going. The ability to build accurate parts quickly and try them has happened. It's a renaissance. Thank you so much. Good morning. So how many of you have ever used these? Just a few of us. Have you seen Mayor Bloomberg's campaign in New York billboards a few years back? I think it was use an earbud, go to prison. No, it was here today, gone tomorrow. It had a picture of an earbud and a picture of a hearing aid. This is kind of a quandary, right? So you all know just exactly what volume to listen at to ensure that you go deaf before your time, right? You just turn it up enough to enjoy it. Is that it? How loud is too loud? And how soft is soft enough? And whose fault is this, that we should have to go deaf listening to music or talking on the phone? Let's find this guy. Where did these come from? Do you know? Well, when I was 13 years old, now this is not Johnny Cash's fault. My dad taught at Peabody and Vanderbilt, and I was a university brat. And he taught church music and classical music, and that was the only kind of music that he allowed in our home. And I had a guitar, and I hid it under the bed for the first 2 years. And I would sing in the closet very, very softly, because I was singing Dylan. Well, I played at coffee shops, and a producer from Music Row heard me and invited me to the studio when I was 13 to do my first professional recording. So I'm blown out. I'm rocking and rolling. My dad doesn't know this. Next door, Johnny Cash is recording, and I sneak into the studio to hear him. And they welcome me in, and they put the headphones on me, and they let me hear him. I didn't like country music until I heard him through the headphones, and then I was blown out. Because the studio sound that you hear is amazing. It just lifts you up, and you think you can just sing the world into a new age. Well, I wanted to hear this way, especially in the closet, because I couldn't sing without alerting my dad unless I put my ear and my hand like that and sang very low. And I couldn't play my guitar when I was doing that. So I took the swim ear molds that my mom bought to keep the YMCA pool water from infecting me. And I drilled holes in them, and I got these little transistor earbuds. You know, they just sounded horrible, but if you put them in an ear mold, you could really hear with them. I used silly putty bubble gum to put them together, okay? So 13 years old, I invented the first in-ear monitors, okay? Well, I get a record deal. Andy Williams signs me the same year that he signed Jimmy Buffett and Ray Stevens, and I go to Hollywood, and I get to sing with all my heroes. I got to sing with Roger McGuinn from the Byrds. I got to sing with Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, Melissa Manchester, Jeffrey Osborne. This was a lot of fun. Stevie Wonder used to get up from the piano and dance around on stage playing harmonica and fall off the edge of the stage. And on stage, the monitor engineer, the guy that mixes those speakers at your feet, would be screaming, "Back up! Back up!" into the microphone. And the only people who could hear him was, of course, the whole audience. And they're just having a heart attack. Stevie couldn't hear him. Well, I'm using this in-ear monitor that I made because I want to hear on stage. And Stevie's engineer says, wait, this is cool. We could tell him to back up and he could hear us. We could direct him around stage. So they call me down to the studio. And he's doing the Secret Life of Plants. And I fill both of his ears with impression material. And he grabs my arm and screams, "Oh my God, I'm blind." Well, he was only half kidding, because he sees with his ears. He's been blind since birth, okay? Helen Keller said that blindness separates you from things. Deafness sets you apart from people, okay? Well, I drilled out these impressions and I put speakers on them and I plugged them into the studio feed, and the drummer kicked the kick drum and some of the dust that was left from hollowing them out shot out of the sound tube. Oh, this is great. I'm going to turn Stevie into Helen Keller overnight. So he grabs these and he won't give them back because he can now see wherever there's a microphone. This is fun for Stevie. Well, I'm turning the bass down, trying to protect his ears, and he comes over and he fights me for it, and he keeps cranking it back up. So we go on tour together and fight over this for years, okay? You're gonna go deaf. No, I'm not. I don't care. Give them to me. All right. So these became the in-ear monitors, and these are the things that you see in people's ears when they're performing on stage that look like they've got gum in their ears. That's my fault. And these became your Sony Walkman and your Apple iPod, because Stevie and I toured all over the world, and other musicians started using this, okay? And it proved the concept for personal audio. And the guys that built the Sony Walkman, some of them were musicians that I built in-ear monitors and microphones for. And they said, "This is our application." I said, "You're going to sell millions of these, but you have to watch out for the hearing loss." Hearing loss? What hearing loss? Well, now there's a documented 77% increase in hearing loss because of my invention. Oh, well, that's not fun. I made these to hear on stage and protect people from going deaf from stage volumes. And now you guys are losing your hearing without knowing it, and you don't know what's too loud and what isn't. Why is this? Any ideas? You know, you hear this all the time. You're going to go deaf if you use these things. How? Does it just kind of come over you in the middle of the night? What is too loud? What's too soft? How does this work? Okay. What we did was filmed it. Now, this is an Apple iPod in a camera in my ear, and it's sealed with an ear tip. Can you see my eardrum? You see it beating like a heart? That's moving thousands of times too far. You would never see the eardrum move like that unless a bomb went off. So sealing a speaker in the ear is doing something similar to a piston. The action of a speaker and the action of a piston is reciprocal. And until you seal it, there's no problem. But once you seal it, now we got a problem. This is like a syringe. This is a bicycle pump. You're not just sealing sound in the ear, you're sealing the sound source. What an oversight. What does this mean? Here on the top, we have acoustic pressures, and this is like a wave coming through the air or across the top of your swimming pool. On the bottom, we have pneumatic pressures. This is like raising and lowering the bottom of your swimming pool. It's orders of magnitude, millions of times greater in force. Of course, we're only going deaf because of it. So how many people got to see AC/DC tour recently? Okay? Well, I introduced Axl Rose and Guns N' Roses to in-ear monitors in the 90s. I love Axl Rose's voice, but not singing Back in Black. I want Brian singing AC/DC, okay? I don't want to go to an AC/DC concert and hear Guns N' Roses. I want Brian. Well, he had to stop touring. I did a video on YouTube, and I just made a personal message to him saying, look, don't stop performing. We have a solution to your hearing woes. He called me up, and I went down to Sarasota, Florida. He drove me around in his Project 7 Jaguar. I loved it. And he was able to hear. What did we do? We built a second eardrum. Right here, you can see it. That's my finger over the camera. When I take my finger away, this stops moving, even though the sound is still playing. We haven't turned off the sound, but when we seal it in my ear, now it's beating up this more compliant second eardrum instead of mine. When it beats up my eardrum, it prematurely triggers your body's protection and my body's protection. It's called the acoustic reflex. Just like when the doctor hits your knee with a hammer and it jumps. When things get about 88 or 90 dB loud, your muscles in your ear hold your eardrum still and pull the middle ear bones away from your cochlea, okay? It's called the acoustic reflex. It's a wonderful thing, except that when you seal sound in the ear and you have that pneumatic pressure, instead of triggering at 88 decibels, it triggers at about 60 decibels. Well, that's counterintuitive. You want to listen to rock and roll, you're deaf and you want to hear better, and the first thing the devices do is turn your volume down without telling you. Your body does this. That's interesting, you see? And you turn it back up and burn your ears out, okay? Pneumatic pressures are what you fill your tires with. Acoustic pressures, even if you turned them up loud enough for everybody's ears to bleed for miles around, they still wouldn't lift your car off the ground. Eardrum to this. Sealing a speaker in the ear beats up the eardrum, overwhelms it with the motions of the speaker that would be harmless if it were in free air. We have a second eardrum. It's a smart eardrum. It doesn't get between the speaker and your eardrum. It's off to the side, but it knows the difference between what you want to listen to and the harmful pressures that cause hearing loss. All right, so let's look at this solution. Instead of beating up this eardrum here, we beat up that little blue eardrum. Now, it's still sealed. Have you noticed when you don't stick these things deep in your ear, you don't get the bass? You leave it loose and you're not hearing enough bass, and then people are constantly cramming them in. Well, we studied this at Vanderbilt. We had got grants from the National Science Foundation, the National Institutes of Health, and we modified this $800 professional Sennheiser in-ear monitor, or this $40 Skull Candy Titan, and we tested it on people, and they could turn the devices this far down, and it didn't sound like they had turned it down, and it sounded better. It was louder at lower volumes, and it sounded better because you're no longer holding the speaker still with your eardrum, which is kind of like trying to put a flashlight out with your retina. Okay? Now, we learned to harvest those pneumatic pressures. So this is a single hearing aid speaker, and the sound is being used, there's the speaker behind the forceps there, to inflate this second eardrum now into an airbag. Well, that's kind of neat. So we take the harmful pressure, instead of beating up your ear with it, we replace these horrible ear tips and ear molds with an airbag that fits any ear at low pressure. You can see the speaker is raising and lowering a quarter. Nobody realized that there was that kind of pressure in sound. That's what's causing the hearing loss. So we made a commercial version of this, and just the music that you're listening to can inflate this bubble and make it retract so that it's not getting dirty when you're not using it. And it inserts itself in your ear canal by unfurling. Instead of sliding in, it unfurls, it everts into the ear canal, and it holds on like a cloud. How many people would like one of these? Oh, good, good. I was worried there for a second.
My name's David Mullins. I've been deaf in my left ear, completely nerve deaf in my left ear for 17 years now. I'm extremely skeptical, but let's give it a shot.
I know. We're restoring hearing function. We've done dozens of these tests with people with surgically cut auditory nerves. We've studied this at Vanderbilt at the Bill Wilkerson Hearing Center. And this second eardrum is now absorbing those pressures as an airbag that turns into a pulsating sphere. And it's lining your ear canal and vibrating in addition to the acoustic information. It's conducted information. You see, you go to a movie, you don't want to see what happens next, you just shut your eyes. You don't shut your eyes and hum. But if you don't want to hear what happens next, you don't just seal your ears. I can't hear you, I can't hear you. Why do they hum? Because you can still hear when the ears are blocked because of conducted sound. It's a very major portion of our hearing experience, is conducted sound. It's coming through your skin, your eyes, your nose, your whole head. Okay? We conduct sound from a totally deaf ear through the middle ear cavity, through the nasal cavity, over to the good ear. And the brain differentiates between the acoustic sound and the conducted sound and gives the guy stereo. We got lucky here, didn't we? We have people who have had cochlear implants scheduled, $150,000 operations, that canceled them because they don't need invasive surgery. They can hear with this bubble. So this is kind of fun because really, personal listening devices, I fashioned the in-ear monitors based on the hearing aid industry. I figured they had this taped. Well, they amplify a certain section of sound, not the whole spectrum, okay? And when you start to do the whole spectrum, these bass frequencies really act as pneumatic battering rams. And that's what's causing the hearing loss. Hearing aids cause hearing loss for the same reasons. Prematurely trigger the acoustic reflex. So this is what we've done with Fusion. If you see, how many people saw the Super Bowl? Or the Grammys? Do you see Beyonce? She's wearing the second eardrum in in-ear monitors that we designed with Fusion. Okay? Autodesk has changed my life. I began touring with Stevie in the 70s. And I would carve each of these parts out of wax. I'd send them to a jeweler to do investment casting, and then have to dremel them out and clean them up. And it took weeks. Now I think of something. I got a nice Formlabs printer that just gives me beautiful things every time I dream of it. You know, there's people that are constantly disrupting industry. That's fun. I like doing it. We can change things. We can improve conditions. This is some of the early ways of making in-ear monitors. Now it's all done with 3D printing. Here are some of the designs that we've done with Fusion. Now, how many people use Fusion or Inventor? Okay? I really want to see what you guys are doing, okay? I'm lucky to be here because you are changing the world. I'm doing it in one way, you're doing it in millions of others, and I'd really like to know what they are. This Formlabs is the best desktop printer I've used. It just spits them out. So we have in Fusion Lifecycle some wonderful things. I'm used to being on stage and I'm used to jamming. I'm used to not caring about anything but creating and enjoying the creation and sharing it. That's fun, okay? So with Lifecycle, you've got revisions for design iterations in Fusion 360. You've got multiple formats, Inventor, Fusion 360, SolidWorks. You've got markup capability and the ability to measure. And you've got these out-of-the-box processes that I really need, which is bill of materials, quality, change management. What does this mean? This means that if you're playing jazz and you're writing jazz, you don't have to stop and start writing the sheet music out, you see, and doing all of the things that keep music going. You can continue to create. That means a lot to me because the ideas just draw each other out. They one after the other. And that's jamming. That's fun. So for me to have Autodesk look at all of our creations and notice the importance, the priorities of importances, to get the data management in such a way that the things that we're doing that need to be automated so we can continue to create happen well, that makes a big difference for me. So I want to talk to you about rock giving back hearing. So I lost some of my hearing to Pete Townsend in the 70s. Have you been to concerts and you walk away and you can't hear for the rest of the evening or the next few days? It's interesting. That acoustic reflex is a governor. It's like if you have a diesel engine, it's not supposed to rev over, what, 3,000 or 4,000 RPM, and you nail it really hard. It doesn't matter how hard you push down the gas or the diesel or the fuel. It's going to stop there, isn't it? Well, you have that happening with your hearing, only if you keep hitting it, it won't go to 3,000 RPM. It'll go to 2,500. And you hit it again and only go to 1,500. You keep hitting it, you see? So that's kind of counterintuitive. You show up to the concert, and the first thing you do is turn your volume down. So you have to keep cranking it. That's not really the best way to hear, okay? There's another change, which is called temporary threshold shift. And that's when you shoot a gun off, and you can't hear for days afterwards. A cochlear change has occurred, a chemical change in your middle ear to make your hearing less sensitive. And if you do that enough, temporary threshold shift leads to permanent hearing loss. Okay? So we have this counterintuitive situation where we really want to enjoy something, and it's, if you look at it visually, it's like, oh, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see it better. This is wonderful art. Turn the lights up, and your iris shuts down. And you need more light, and your iris shuts down. You see? This is kind of silly. Why not find the level before your body turns your volume down and enjoy it at that level? You'll have better dynamic range. You'll have better sound. You see? When your body starts turning your volume down, it's interrupting the way that you hear. It's holding your eardrum still. It's not as sensitive. So even when you turn the music up, it's not going to be as bright and dynamic and full as it was before you triggered your acoustic reflex. Make sense? Paul Stanley from KISS was born with microtia. He had one ear that wasn't formed properly. He's done his whole music career with listening with one ear. Most people don't know that. Can you imagine? You're an artist, and you go in the recording studio, and you record songs, and you perform for millions of people, and you're just hearing with one ear. I went to see him, and I gave him this technology because he's not able to sing very well anymore because he hears the harmonics instead of the fundamental. He's had the fundamental tone so loud that that's very low. And if you've heard Christmas carols played by bells, okay, their overtones clash. It's hard to tell what the song is. He's hearing the harmonics, the overtones, and not the fundamental, okay? And we use this technology with him, this second eardrum, and all of a sudden he's able to hear the fundamental again. So he is backing this new foundation, this new effort that we have to have rock give back hearing. What does this mean? This means earbuds that you can use where lower volume sound louder, that are very affordable. And it also means something Autodesk is helping us with, a new hearing aid, which is high enough quality to use on stage or in the studio. No one uses hearing aids on stage or in the studio, regardless if they cost $3,000, $1,500, or $10,000. They're not good enough to use in a studio or on stage. But the very same speakers are used in my in-ear monitors and are used on stage and in the studio, and people who aren't even performers buy them by the millions. This is kind of a travesty. The same speakers don't sound good enough to use in hearing aids on stage, but they're good enough to use in in-ear monitors. Let's have a hearing aid that sounds good enough to be used as an in-ear monitor. Sound like a good idea? And let's make it affordable for everyone. So we've gotten together with Autodesk and Connexent, and we have a chip now, and I took that to Brian Johnson, and it allows you to do your own tone control, your own equalization, it's called, where you can turn up the different frequencies that you need, and you can do it separately on one ear or on the other with your PC or your smartphone. When you get a hearing aid, it's kind of like going to the car dealer and buying a car, and every time you want to change the station or the volume, you have to go back to the dealer. I have a lot of respect for audiologists. When I did the in-ear monitors, I got to mix every song in real time. I didn't just set it and forget it, you see. I got to change and mix for people, all right? You go to an audiologist for a hearing aid, and they get one shot to set it for you. If it's not right, then you got to come back for another visit, okay? Now, they will tell you when it doesn't sound right that it will take them 3 months for them to train your brain. I can see me right now on stage with Reba McEntire. Reba, I know this doesn't sound good. It'll take me 3 months to train you. I'm fired? Oh. So there's a bit of a disconnect. Hearing aids do a wonderful job of being portable and cosmetic. And yet, we walk around flaunting and dancing with white cords. And we power it with smartphones with beautiful amplifiers. And yet, we must have hearing aids that are cosmetic and small. And they have microphones on them, but you would never record a concert with those microphones and play it back for anybody because it doesn't sound good. Yet, you can buy binaural microphones to wear on your ears that are very high quality and they're not very expensive. And you can record a concert and play it back for someone else later on headphones, and they feel like they were at the concert. Why don't we marry these two technologies? Make sense? So we have a Rock Gives Back Hearing campaign, and Brian and Paul Stanley and the Grateful Dead and KISS have pledged their social media to, one, selling this new earbud that we have called the Adele Drum, and you'll get to see it and hear it if you like. And we sell enough of those that we can fund this new hearing aid, and we can bring the cost down so that you don't have to be deaf to own one, And as you start to, and your hearing changes, you know, your cilia in your ear, the hair cells, change just like your hair. Okay? You get a little gray hair. You know, you may have some gray hair. It's not a handicap, right? Well, your hearing changes. And this is not something that needs to be such a horrible thing that you resist. It's something that you can actually know about yourself, and you can change the way your music sounds to you and bring it out so that it sounds better. And if you use this new technology, you don't have to go deaf while you're doing it. So that's our Rock Gives Back hearing campaign. So I'm so delighted to be here. I'd like to know what each of you are doing. I'd like to sit there and have each one of you come up, and I'll listen to you. I don't get a chance to do that, so afterwards we have a chance to mingle in a breakout event. It's important to me to know. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. Thank you so much.